She didn't flinch when the tray
Yes,
landed,
finalize the
bone white
acquisition
porcelain, a
paperwork by
thin
noon
slice of
GMT.
something that
No
didn't
delays.
belong in first class, placed with a smile that felt
Give
like
me
a
the phone
verdict.
now. This is for your safety.
This meal fits you, the flight
Protocol
attendant
7
said,
has been activated,
voice
and I
soft
know
enough
what
to
I am
pass
doing.
as service, sharp enough to cut skin.
Ma'am, I'm asking
Row
you
2
for the
went
last
silent.
time to...
Ice chimed in a glass. Somewhere behind her, a man cleared his throat as
You
if
know
to
who
help
I
the
am
moment
now.
along. Amara Cole looked at the plate, then at the woman holding it, then past her, out the oval window where dusk smeared the sky into two colors, the blue you believe in, and the black you're told to doubt. She breathed once, slow. The seatbelt sign dinged. In the galley, metal kissed metal. She did not raise her voice. She raised her phone. Fire them now. Not a shout, not a plea, just a line delivered like a gavel, like a door closing on a decade of patience. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Amara. She set the phone face down on the tray table, screen dim, decision bright. The attendant didn't move. Another younger one hovered a pace behind. Dark hair pulled tight, eyes wide the way eyes get when truth walks into a room uninvited. The purser leaned from row 1, measuring Amara the way some people measure thread, stretching until they think it's about to snap. "Is there a problem, ma'am?" he asked, already placing the blame in her lap. Amara folded the linen napkin with careful, practiced precision, edges aligned like clauses in a contract. "Not for long," she said, almost kind. She glanced at the aisle. Passengers stared in the way people stare at storms through glass. Safe, curious, unwilling to stand in the rain with you. 20 minutes earlier, at the gate, the same voice had told her, "Premium passengers first," while a man in a golf jacket stepped past with a chuckle. It slid off her then, the way small cuts do when you have work to finish. But here, at 34,000 feet where the cabin hummed like a held breath, disrespect didn't slide. It stuck. The young attendant, name tag Maya, shifted her weight. She started, then stopped beneath the purser's glance. She looked at the plate, at the woman who had received it, at the tiny flag toothpick stabbing the wrong meal. Her jaw tightened. She tapped something on the tablet she carried. Not a recording. Just a note to herself. Time, words, faces. "Ma'am," the original attendant said again. Softer now, "We're following policy." Policy. The word tumbled onto the aisle like a dropped coin. Everyone heard it, no one wanted to claim it. Amara let it ring, then die. She set the plate aside without touching it, as if refusing to sign a contract written in someone else's handwriting. Her phone lit with a name. Rena, Chief of Staff. She didn't pick up. She didn't need to. Protocol had been drafted months ago after too many emails from incidents that weren't incidents, patterns pretending to be accidents. Tonight was not a surprise. Tonight was a mirror. A man across the aisle raised his camera just enough to capture safety without courage. Another passenger whispered, maybe she used points like dignity had tears. The purser stepped closer, careful smile widening. "We can move you to an available seat if first class isn't comfortable for you." Amara's eyes met his. The cabin lights painted a thin line along the edge of her jaw, steel under silk. "I am perfectly comfortable," she said. "Are you?" For a fraction of a second, a tremor crossed his lips. Then the professional mask slid back into place. "We'll sort this out after service." Service continued. Champagne hissed. Real plates clinked. The man in 2C received the entree Amara had paid for. He looked away when their eyes met. "You shouldn't be talking to her like that," Maya murmured, too low for anyone but air to hear. The words surprised even her. The purser's head snapped. The warning in his glance said later. Maya's shoulders fell, but something in her gaze stayed standing. Amara turned the phone over with her thumb. On the black glass, her reflection looked like a question the room couldn't answer. She thought of being 12, sitting in coach on a church trip, when a stranger leaned across the aisle to tell her, "You'll understand first class when you're older." She had gotten older. She had bought planes. The sentence still lingered. A jolt rippled. The fuselage groaned and settled. The attendant returned, smile thin. "Anything else I can get you?" "Yes," Amara said. "Respect." It landed heavier than the turbulence. In row 3, someone exhaled almost applause. The purser opened his mouth. Close it, she thought, and he did, as if the command had traveled without sound. Lights dimmed to amber. Engines droned their endless lullaby. Amara's phone buzzed once. A confirmation that a door miles below had opened, that people in dark suits were sitting up straighter, that a protocol with 7 steps had just taken its first. She didn't smile. She lifted the napkin again, folded it once more, smaller this time, a white flag that meant the opposite. Outside the window, the sunset thinned into a blade. "Ms." the attendant ventured, finally looking for a name. Amara met her eyes. "You won't need it," she said, and let the silence do the rest. The plane hummed like a secret no one wanted to keep. Outside, clouds moved in slow procession, white, orderly, obedient. Inside, the air was brittle. Every sound, cutlery, heels, whispers, seemed to lean toward her row. Amara didn't look up. She didn't need to. The hum of power was different when it came from silence. She checked her watch, 8:47 p.m. West Coast time. Her assistant, Rena, would already be in the control hub, watching the cabin feed. Protocol 7 was never used lightly. It required a board member's consent. She was all 3. The attendant who had served her, the one with the polite venom, stood a few rows back, pretending to check seatbelts. Every few seconds, her eyes darted toward Amara, as if waiting for a reaction that refused to arrive. That refusal was its own weapon. Maya, the trainee, lingered in the aisle, clutching her service tablet. Her lips pressed together like she was holding back truth itself. She leaned toward the purser. "Sir," she whispered, "that was wrong. You saw how she was spoken to." The purser's tone stayed rehearsed. "We don't question senior staff during service. She's a paying guest. That's enough, Maya." His voice dropped lower. "Don't ruin your career over someone else's attitude." But Maya's gaze returned to Amara. There was no attitude, only presence. Controlled, deliberate, quiet in a way that made the rest of the cabin too loud. Across the aisle, a man in a navy suit typed on his laptop, pretending not to record. The reflection of his phone camera glinted in the window. The story was already escaping its container. Amara reached for her glass of water. Her fingers were steady. In her mind, she replayed the company's diversity ad. "Every passenger deserves to feel seen." How ironic. She thought that invisibility always came in luxury packaging. Rena's text flashed. Stream confirmed. Legal observing. Good, she wanted witnesses, the right kind. The last audit report had flagged inconsistencies in guest treatment. Tonight would end those inconsistencies permanently. The seatbelt sign flickered off. The purser made his move. "Ma'am," he said, bending slightly. Voice dipped in false patience. "If the meal isn't to your liking, I can offer something from economy." Gasps flickered through the cabin like sparks on dry grass. Amara's hand stilled midair. She turned slowly, eyes meeting his. "Did you just offer to downgrade me?" "It's standard courtesy," he said, instantly defensive. "Courtesy," she repeated. The word tasted like static. "Noted," Maya spoke again, louder this time. "Sir, that's not standard. You can't— Enough!" he snapped. The sharpness made heads turn. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, calm, detached. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be cruising at 37,000 feet." But calm was already gone. Amara set her glass down. "Tell me," she said to the purser, "when you see me, what do you assume?" He blinked. I don't understand." "You do." The aisle shrank between them. Passengers leaned closer, drawn into the gravity of something unscripted. "People like you always think silence means weakness," she said. "It doesn't, it means record." She didn't raise her phone, she didn't have to. A red light near the cabin ceiling blinked faintly. The live feed had just switched angles. Rena was watching from 4,000 miles away, logging every word. The purser exhaled, half frustration, half fear. "Ma'am, I think you're making a scene." Amara's reply was soft. "No, I'm making history." The cabin fell silent again. Somewhere behind her, Maya whispered to herself, barely audible but still caught by the microphone feed. "She doesn't need a voice raised. She's the reason they lower theirs." Outside, lightning flashed once on the horizon, just enough to light the clouds like truth trying to break through. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft gold, pretending calm. It fooled no one. You could feel the tension hanging like static before a storm. The air smelled of reheated sauce and embarrassment. The man in 2C kept glancing toward Amara, pretending to check his watch every 30 seconds. Even the hum of the engine seemed to wait for permission to breathe. Amara didn't move. Her posture stayed effortless, but her stillness felt heavier than anyone else's motion. Power didn't need to speak, it waited. She brushed invisible dust from her sleeve, the kind of gesture people remember later and misinterpret as arrogance when it was really patience running out. In the galley, the two attendants whispered with the purser. One hissed, "You should report her. These people always play the race card." The purser nodded slightly, unaware the cabin feed was transmitting every word to a legal counsel sitting in an office with a live timestamp. Maya stood frozen by the curtain, eyes darting between them and the passenger she'd silently decided to protect. Her hands shook, but her resolve didn't. She opened her tablet again and quietly selected Incident Report, pending review. It wasn't official authority, but it would leave a trail. The plane hit light turbulence. Cups rattled, ice chimed, hearts jumped. The intercom clicked. "Cabin crew, take your seats." The purser muttered something under his breath and sat down directly across from Amara. His eyes were defiant, but there was a flicker of uncertainty, the kind that appears when someone begins to suspect they've misjudged their opponent. Amara leaned back, gaze steady. "You ever been audited midair?" He frowned. "Excuse me?" She looked at him, not smiling. "No, you wouldn't have. Most people don't realize accountability can fly." He blinked twice, trying to calculate whether it was a threat or philosophy. Her phone buzzed once. Rena's message. "Board connected. Legal flag discriminatory language in transcript." The corner of Amara's mouth lifted, not triumph, just confirmation. She didn't need revenge. She needed clarity, and clarity was coming. Behind her, Maya whispered to another attendant, "That woman, she's not just a passenger." The other whispered back, "Then who is she?" "I think we're about to find out." The purser cleared his throat, trying to reclaim the stage. "Ma'am, for the comfort of other guests, I'm going to ask that you refrain from recording or making calls during flight." Amara's response was calm, surgical. "You might want to check who owns the frequency first." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, voice low but unmistakably final, "you're operating on my network." A beat. Then two passengers exchanged glances, realization dawning like sunrise, slow but irreversible. The man in 2C mouthed a single word to his wife. "CEO?" The purser's hand twitched toward his radio, but the light on it blinked red. Jammed. Controlled. Above their heads, a chime sounded that wasn't from the cockpit. It was from the company's internal system. He didn't recognize the tone, but Amara did. Rena's voice came faintly through the phone on her tray table. "Confirmation received, Ms. Cole. Step 2 initiated." Maya inhaled sharply. "What's step 2? Amara finally looked at her. Visibility. The overhead monitors, normally looping travel ads, flickered. Then the airline logo appeared, followed by a single line of text. "Nova Air values every passenger equally." The cabin froze. The purser's jaw dropped. He stammered, What is this?" Amara turned back to the window, her reflection staring through the clouds. "A reminder," she said. "One this flight needed." Lightning flashed again, closer this time. It illuminated her face in white fire. Maya whispered, almost reverent, "She's turning the whole plane into a lesson." No one disagreed. Not even the engines dared to interrupt. The glow from the monitors lingered in the cabin, a silent indictment disguised as company branding. Passengers whispered as if trapped inside a confession booth. The purser's composure cracked first. His forehead glistened, his jaw clenching as he pretended to adjust his tie. The two attendants behind him whispered frantic questions. "Is this part of training? What's happening?" Maya already knew. She'd read about it once in orientation, the mystery audit protocol, a corporate ghost story no one believed. Executives would sometimes board flights incognito to test crew behavior, but no one had ever seen it happen. No one thought it was real. Until now. Amara Cole didn't look at them. She reached for the small reading light above her and flicked it off, her profile catching only flashes of lightning outside. To the untrained eye, she was still just a passenger. To anyone paying attention, she was gravity. Her phone buzzed twice. Rena's message scrolled across the dark screen. Cabin feed public in 2 minutes, confirm? Amara typed one word. Yes. The purser leaned in again, his tone slipping from polite to pleading. Ma'am, I'm going. To have to insist that you turn off any devices transmitting. Insist carefully, Amara said without raising her eyes. The sharpness in her tone wasn't anger. It was clarity. Because in exactly 90 seconds, your insistence will be broadcast to corporate headquarters. He blinked. Broadcast? Amara met his gaze. You wanted attention. You have it. A murmur spread through the cabin. The man in 2C lowered his phone. The woman beside him whispered, Is this live? Another passenger across the aisle, a travel blogger, whispered to her followers, We're watching something historic at 37,000 feet. Maya's pulse thudded in her ears. She wanted to do something, say something, but Amara's calm told her that everything necessary was already in motion. Outside, the sky split with lightning. The flash lit Amara's face, revealing an expression that wasn't vengeance, it was resolve carved from memory, She thought of her first flight as CEO, sitting in this same airline's lounge 5 years ago when a staffer mistook her for a cleaner and handed her a tray. She'd smiled then too, not out of forgiveness, but foresight. She knew power was patient. Tonight it arrived on schedule. The purser straightened, desperate to reclaim authority. You can't threaten my staff, he snapped. We're professionals. Amara turned her head, slow and surgical. Professionalism isn't what you do when cameras are on. It's what you do when you think they aren't. Her phone chimed again. Rena's voice came through this time, calm and clinical. Ms. Cole, feed is live. Executives and press representatives are connected. Amara smiled faintly. Thank you, Rena. The attendants froze, confusion blooming into dread. Press? One whispered. What does she mean, press? Maya swallowed hard. It means we're trending. The purser's radio crackled, then died. The signal had been overridden. His eyes darted toward the cockpit, but even the captain wasn't answering now. Amara set her phone down on the tray table, screen glowing faintly with rows of small icons, names, departments, and the words, Compliance Stream Active. She looked up, voice low but cutting through the cabin like glass through smoke. Since we're all here, she said, let's have a real service review. No one moved. You served me disrespect, she continued. You offered me a downgrade I didn't ask for, and you did it wearing this company's uniform. So here's what happens next. Accountability lands before the plane does. A murmur rippled through the passengers. Some raised phones, others just stared. The purser tried one last defense. You can't just... Amara interrupted, softer than a whisper. Watch me. Lightning struck again, thunder rolling seconds later, loud enough to mask the soft chime from her phone. Rena's message blinked once more. Confirmed. Internal HR notification dispatched. Maya looked up, realizing what that meant. The purser's ID badge light flickered red. Amara didn't look satisfied, only finished. Outside the window, the storm began to clear, but inside the cabin, it had only begun. The storm drifted east, leaving the sky raw and heavy with afterlight. Inside, the plane floated in that strange quiet where everyone hears their own heartbeat. The purser sat stiffly in his jump seat, badge blinking red, still not understanding that one small light had already rewritten his future. Amara's eyes followed the window reflection, not the man. She didn't gloat. She studied patterns, the way arrogance always looked surprised when consequence arrived on time. The attendants huddled near the galley, whispering frantic apologies that sounded more like rehearsals for innocence. Maya stood, halfway down the aisle, her tablet glowing against her trembling hands. The system notification flashed across her screen. Crew audit active. Incident timestamp locked. She had never seen that message before. No one had. It meant corporate oversight was watching live. Her throat went dry. She wasn't scared for herself. She was scared of what this moment would mean, the kind of fear that comes when truth stops being invisible. She took one step toward Amara, then another. "Ma'am," she said softly, "may I speak with you?" The purser's voice snapped through the air like static. "Maya, step back." Amara looked up. Her gaze was calm, direct. "Let her." Maya hesitated, then continued forward until she stood beside the first-class row. She didn't sit. She didn't bow. She just breathed. "I saw everything," she said quietly. From the first comment to the downgrade offer, it wasn't right. Amara tilted her head slightly, curiosity softening the steel in her eyes. "And what will you do with that truth?" Maya's fingers tightened on her tablet. "Log it, so they can't say it didn't happen." A faint smile crossed Amara's face. Approval, not amusement. "Good. That's how change begins. Not with outrage, with record." The purser shot up from his seat, face flushed. "You're both violating protocol." Amara's tone didn't change. "We're enforcing it." Passengers stirred. A woman whispered, "She's protecting that girl." A man muttered, "She's teaching her." The flight attendant who had first served the wrong meal, her name tag read Chloe, stepped forward now, voice shaky. Ma'am, I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a mix-up." Amara turned slowly toward her. "A mix-up?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "Do you know how many times in my life I've heard that? Bank clerks, hotel desks, conference doors. It's never a mistake. It's a pattern." Chloe's lips parted, then closed again. The silence afterward was heavier than any apology could fix. Maya spoke again, her courage steadier this time. "They made me watch those diversity videos in training. They said this airline was built on respect. I believed them." Amara nodded. "So did I. I helped write that policy." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Chloe froze. The purser blinked. Even the passengers leaned forward. "You what?" he stammered. Amara's gaze didn't waver. "I drafted the equity charter for this airline group. The one you all signed during onboarding." Maya's eyes widened. The truth was no longer hidden. It was in the air, undeniable and charged. The purser sank back into his seat as if gravity had increased. "Then why didn't you say who you were?" Amara's reply was quiet. "Because power should never need to announce itself to be respected." Her words landed like a verdict. From the cockpit, the captain's voice broke the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent shortly." Descent. The word carried a different meaning now. Amara reached for her phone, checking one final message from Rena. Press outlet confirmed viewing. HR escalation complete. Continue at discretion. She slipped the device back onto the tray table and said, almost to herself, "Then let's finish what we started." The cabin lights brightened slightly, revealing faces that no longer looked like strangers but witnesses, each one quietly realizing they were watching more than a flight. They were watching a shift. Amara turned toward Maya. "When we land, stay near me." Maya nodded, voice shaking. "Yes, ma'am." Outside, the clouds thinned to reveal the faint glow of the runway ahead, a line of light waiting for impact. The captain's voice faded, replaced by the mechanical sigh of the landing gear unfolding beneath them. A low vibration ran through the cabin, part turbulence, part tension. Every passenger knew something extraordinary was still in the air. The seatbelt light blinked on. The purser should have given the final announcement, but his radio stayed dead in his lap. He sat pale, motionless, eyes fixed on the floor. Chloe, the senior attendant, adjusted her blazer with shaking hands as if neatness could disguise guilt. Amara Cole didn't move. Her gaze remained steady on the window where streaks of rain caught the city lights below. The reflection that stared back wasn't the face of revenge. It was the face of someone weighing consequence like currency. Maya stood near the galley, heart pounding, watching Amara with reverence and fear. The older woman's calm felt impossible, like still water over a riptide. Maya wanted to speak but couldn't trust her voice. The whole cabin had become a cathedral, and silence was its sermon. A soft tone chimed on Amara's phone. "Rena, Cargo ground team ready. Legal and PR stationed at Gate 12, security briefed." Amara typed back 2 words. Proceed quietly. Behind her, a man whispered to his wife. She's going to fire them, isn't she? The wife replied, no, she already did. The engines groaned as the plane tilted into descent. The overhead bins rattled like teeth. Chloe finally broke the silence. Ms. Cole, please, if I could explain. Amara turned her head, voice calm. You've spent the last hour explaining. You just didn't use words. Chloe's face fell. Her fingers clutched the seat back, knuckles white. I didn't mean to. You meant to assume, Amara said. And assumption is policy when no one corrects it. The words sliced clean through the hum of the engines. Maya swallowed hard. She wanted to step in, to protect the woman who had humiliated her boss minutes ago. But something inside her knew this was how justice learned to breathe. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. Amara reached down and lifted her leather folder from beneath the seat. Inside was a single document bearing the Nova Air seal. She placed it on the tray table, unsigned. That's the renewal of the in-flight management contract, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. I was going to approve it tonight. Chloe blinked. You were? I was. She closed the folder gently like ending a prayer. Now it expires at midnight. Maya's breath hitched. Even the passengers who didn't understand corporate politics felt the weight of the words. This wasn't just about one meal. It was about an ecosystem of complacency. The captain's voice returned. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. The purser's radio sparked once, then died again. He looked helpless, small. Amara didn't look at him. Her attention was fixed on the reflection of runway lights flickering across the window, thin lines converging, like destiny narrowing to a single point. Ms. Cole, Maya whispered. What happens after we land? Amara's reply was measured. People learn what power looks like when it refuses to shout. The nose dipped. The sound grew louder. Raindrops streaked sideways against the glass. The city rose to meet them, unaware that a reckoning was descending with the flight. Chloe pressed her palms together, murmuring an apology no one heard. The purser buried his face in his hands. Maya stood straighter, clutching her tablet like proof of something sacred. Amara exhaled once, calm, precise. Rena, she said softly into her mic, notify operations. They'll need the gate cleared. Understood, came the reply. Moments later, the landing gear struck the runway with a roar that felt like punctuation. Passengers gasped. The aircraft steadied, brakes whining. The city's night skyline blurred past, a streak of gold and consequence. Amara whispered almost to herself. And that is arrival. The plane slowed, heavy with the kind of silence that doesn't end, it transforms. The passengers didn't clap. They didn't dare. They were too aware that the real landing hadn't happened yet. The jet slowed to a crawl, tires hissing against wet asphalt. Outside the window, the night shimmered under floodlights, silver streaks across the rain-soaked runway. Inside, no one spoke. The engines purred in that uneasy half-silence between arrival and consequence. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice finally crackled through the speakers. Polite, careful. Welcome to Los Angeles International Airport. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. It wasn't the usual tone of relief. It sounded like warning. Amara Cole stayed still. Her phone lit up once more. Rena, ground security in position. Press at terminal doors. HR liaison waiting on tarmac. She replied with a single word. Proceed. The purser glanced toward her, confused by the faint reflection of blue lights flashing outside. A moment later, the seatbelt sign chimed off, but no one moved. The aisle was a corridor of held breaths. Maya leaned forward from her jump seat. Ma'am, do you want me to stay? Amara said softly. You're about to learn how truth lands. The cabin door clicked. Not the gentle sound of release. This was sharper, deliberate. Through the narrow window, 2 figures in dark suits appeared, flanking the jet bridge like punctuation marks. One of them lifted a small tablet that glowed red with the company crest. The purser rose, panicked. Who are they? What's happening? Amara stood for the first time since takeoff. When she did, the entire first-class cabin seemed to realign itself around her. They're here, she said, for you. Chloe took a step back, her voice trembling. Miss Cole, please, don't do this here. Not in front of... Amara's tone was soft but immovable. In front of everyone is exactly where this belongs. She walked slowly down the aisle. Passengers shifted, phones discreetly raised, recording the quiet spectacle of authority. The two compliance officers stepped inside, their presence calm, surgical. One nodded toward Amara. "Orders confirmed, Ms. Cole." The purser's face drained. "Orders? What orders?" "Effective immediately," the taller officer said. "You and the attendants assigned to Flight 1187 are relieved of duty pending investigation." Chloe gasped. "You can't." Amara's eyes met hers. "You already did. You relieved yourself the moment you chose who deserved service." The officer extended a hand. "Please surrender your badges." Chloe hesitated. The purser tried to protest, words tumbling over themselves. "You have no authority to—" Amara cut in, her voice a low current. "I am the authority. You just never imagined she looked like me." Phones caught the line. Whispers rippled. A man in 2C murmured, "She owns the airline." Someone else answered, "She owns this moment." Chloe unclipped her badge, hands shaking. The purser followed, slower, as if delay could rewrite the scene. The officers sealed both badges in a transparent envelope and nodded. "Thank you," Amara said. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was clinical. "HR will follow up." "Maya, please escort our guest to the door." Maya blinked. "Me? You're the only one who remembered the company's values tonight. Consider this your first leadership test." Maya's eyes widened, a mix of fear and honor. "Yes, ma'am." She turned toward the trembling crew, voice steady for the first time. "This way, please." As they walked past the rows of silent passengers, no one clapped. No one cheered. But every eye followed, carrying the weight of quiet vindication. When the door opened, the cold runway air swept in, crisp and sharp. The purser glanced back once at Amara, at what respect really looked like, then stepped off the plane. Amara remained by the doorway, her silhouette framed by flashing lights. She spoke softly, more to the night than to anyone else. "Justice doesn't need applause. It just needs witnesses." The words lingered as the door sealed shut. Maya returned, breath unsteady. "They're gone." Amara nodded once. "Good. Now let's make sure the story stays where it belongs, everywhere." Outside, the rain began again, thin and deliberate, washing the runway clean. The cabin door sealed with a hydraulic hiss that felt final. The noise of the outside world, rain, engines, human chatter, muted into a hum. Inside, the energy shifted. Some passengers exhaled for the first time in an hour. Others sat stunned, afraid to move, as if the air itself still carried her authority. Amara didn't sit back down. She stood near the doorway, watching the rain run in small rivers across the glass. Runways were meant for arrivals, she thought. Tonight they were for accountability. Her phone buzzed again. "Rena, crew badges deactivated. Media confirmed on standby. Statement draft ready." Amara typed. "Hold for 5 minutes." She wanted the silence to breathe first. The aftermath always mattered more than the act. Maya approached cautiously, her steps soft on the carpet. "Ms. Cole," she said, voice almost apologetic. "I didn't know who you were. I should have stepped in sooner." Amara turned. "You did when it counted." Maya looked down, cheeks flushed. Everyone was watching, but no one wanted to be first. "That's how systems survive," Amara replied. Fear disguised as professionalism. The young woman nodded slowly. "I won't forget tonight." "You shouldn't," Amara said. "Memory is how justice keeps receipts." They both turned as the cabin lights flickered back to normal, neutral, unremarkable. But nothing about this flight would be remembered as normal. A few passengers began to clap softly, unsure if applause was appropriate. It wasn't celebration. It was release. Amara gave a polite nod toward them, then reached for her carry-on. She always traveled light. Just one leather bag, one folder, and a calm she'd spent years constructing. The intercom crackled again, this time from the captain. "Ms. Cole, corporate has informed us the gate crew is requesting your presence on the tarmac. Tell them I'll be there shortly," she replied. Her tone carried no rush, no fatigue, only precision. Maya hesitated. "Do you want me to come with you?" Amara glanced toward the window where the runway lights shimmered like molten gold. "Yes, you should see how accountability looks from the ground." As they stepped into the jet bridge, the air grew colder, cleaner. The smell of rain replaced recycled oxygen. Reporters waited behind a rope line beyond the gate glass, cameras aimed like questions. Behind them stood security, legal, and HR, faces pale under fluorescent light. A compliance officer approached. Ms. Cole, everything's been documented. The footage is secured. Amara nodded. And the crew? Being escorted to the terminal. HR will handle next steps. Media's been told this was a routine inspection. Good, she said. Let it stay routine. Let the lesson feel ordinary. That's how change lasts. Maya followed her down the stairs to the tarmac. The wind whipped through their coats, rain dots glistening against floodlights. A dozen airport staff stood in cautious formation. One of the senior managers stepped forward. Ma'am, if we'd known you were on board. Amara stopped him with a look. That's exactly the problem, he froze. She continued. You shouldn't treat people well because they might be someone. You should because they are. Maya's breath caught. She'd never heard power sound so human. Amara handed the manager her folder. Renew the contract after retraining. Everyone from purser to pilot takes the equity course again. Non-negotiable. Yes, ma'am, she turned to Maya. You'll report to me next month. Corporate rotation, mentorship program. Maya blinked, stunned. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Then show up. Yes, ma'am. A small smile flickered across Amara's face, the kind that wasn't about triumph, but trust restored. Behind them, the plane gleamed under the rain, a silver monument to one woman's quiet refusal to accept less. Come on, Amara said softly. Let's go finish the story. The rain had softened to a mist now, rising like steam from the tarmac lights. Cameras clicked behind the terminal glass, but Amara ignored them. She wasn't here for headlines. She was here for clarity. The hum of engines in the distance sounded almost ceremonial, like drums at the edge of justice. She walked beside Maya toward the line of executives waiting just beyond the gate. 3 men in dark suits, ties trembling in the wind, shifted nervously as she approached. Behind them, a woman from public relations held a clipboard, pretending not to tremble. Ms. Cole, one of the executives began, forcing a smile. We're deeply sorry you had to experience. Amara raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Don't perform, fix, he blinked. We're already preparing a public statement. You'll release nothing until I approve it, she said, voice low but lethal. This isn't about damage control. It's about integrity control. The PR woman swallowed hard, lowering her clipboard. Amara turned to Maya. You were there from the first insult to the final act. Tell them what you saw. Maya hesitated. She wasn't used to addressing power in suits. They assumed she didn't belong in first class. They mocked her, ignored her, then tried to cover it up. The executives looked at each other, uncomfortable. Amara continued. And now you'll make sure no one else repeats that sequence. Every employee, every level, from flight crew to boardroom. One of the men cleared his throat. Ms. Cole, with all due respect, this was an isolated incident. Amara stepped closer, her heels tapping against the wet ground. No incident is isolated when bias is policy by habit. The man lowered his gaze. She wasn't raising her voice, yet every syllable carried the weight of a press conference. Do you know what your brand promises? She asked. Comfort, dignity, safety. But none of those mean anything if respect is optional. She let the words hang in the cold air. Even the rain seemed to pause, then she did something unexpected. She handed Maya her phone. Play it, she said. Maya pressed the screen. The cabin footage began, a silent reel of what had unfolded only an hour earlier. Chloe's smirk, the purser's dismissal, Amara's calm reply. Fire them now. The video looped on the phone's bright screen, lighting Maya's face in soft blue. The executive stared, shame reflected in the pixels. This, Amara said quietly, isn't about embarrassment. It's about education. She turned to the PR director. Draft the statement around that idea. We don't hide mistakes. We model accountability. Yes, Ms. Cole. Maya glanced up, astonished by the balance in her tone. No rage, no vindication. Just purpose. People will talk about this, one of the men said. The media will spin it, Amara nodded. Let them. The truth doesn't need editing. She turned slightly, facing the line of staff who had gathered near the terminal door. Pilots, attendants, baggage handlers. Their faces carried that mixture of fear and admiration reserved for someone who broke silence without breaking decorum. Amara raised her voice just enough for them to hear. If you ever wonder what leadership looks like, it's not the person shouting orders. It's the one standing in the rain to make sure the right thing gets done. The words landed deeper than any speech could. Maya felt her chest tighten. She had never seen command used so gently. The PR woman looked up. Should we alert the board press office, ma'am? Amara shook her head. No need. The story will reach them before the rain stops. A faint smile ghosted her lips, not pride. Peace. Then she handed Maya the phone. Keep it, she said. A reminder of what truth looks like when it's recorded, not retold. Maya held it like something sacred. Yes, ma'am. As they turned toward the terminal doors, the runway lights reflected in the puddles behind them, long lines of gold fading into black. By the time Amara and Maya reached the terminal, the world outside had already begun to stir. Phones were buzzing with live updates. Someone on the flight had uploaded the video before landing. Headlines glowed on nearby screens. Airline CEO faces discrimination on her own plane. Fire them now. Silent power, loud lesson. Amara walked through the automatic doors without flinching. The terminal air smelled of coffee, jet fuel, and questions. Employees lined the edge of the concourse, whispering, pointing, unsure if they were witnessing a scandal or a sermon. Security escorted the dismissed crew toward a side exit. Chloe's mascara had run, streaking like old ink. The purser's posture had shrunk into apology. Every step they took sounded heavier under the fluorescent lights. The executives trailed behind Amara, speaking in fragments. PR crisis. Stock volatility. Internal memo. Amara stopped. Just stopped. The sound of her heels cutting against the tile made everyone else stop too. She turned slightly, her voice clear, even calm. This isn't a crisis, she said. It's clarity. Let it live that way. Her words didn't rise above conversation level, but the echo carried farther than a shout. Reporters waited behind a velvet rope near Gate 12. Flashes went off, questions firing like artillery. Ms. Cole, how do you respond? Were you traveling incognito? Is the video authentic? Amara didn't slow. She faced the microphones only when she reached the center of the crowd. Rainwater dripped from the hem of her coat. Her hair framed her face like armor. Yes, she said simply. The footage is real. A murmur rippled through the reporters. One leaned forward. Then is it true you ordered the crew fired mid-flight? Amara's gaze was steady. No, I ordered accountability mid-flight. Termination was a result of their own behavior. Do you believe this will damage the airline's reputation? Another asked. She paused, choosing her words like an architect chooses beams. Reputation is what you show when the world's watching. Character is what you show when it isn't. Tonight proved which one we're building on. The crowd quieted. The clicking of cameras softened, replaced by the low hum of respect. Maya stood off to the side, eyes wide. Every line Amara spoke felt like a blueprint for the kind of leader she wanted to become. One reporter called out, "Do you forgive them?" Amara glanced toward the glass wall where the runway lights still shimmered against the dark. Forgiveness isn't the point, she said. Change is, another asked. Do you plan to press charges? She smiled faintly. No, I plan to press standards. It landed, the line everyone would quote. The one that would headline morning shows. The one that said everything without saying too much. Her phone buzzed again. Rena. Board approves public release. Social metrics surging. Staff morale up 18%. Amara looked up at the crowd. This company will issue an internal message tonight. Not an apology, a reminder. We can't sell dignity if we forget how to serve it. Flashes went off again, but the frenzy had changed tone. The press wasn't hunting scandal anymore. They were documenting reform. She handed her coat to an assistant, exhaling once. The tension of the flight had dissolved into purpose. Her calm radiated through the space, grounding everyone around her. Maya approached, hesitant. Ms. Cole, people online. They're calling you the Iron Dove. Amara smirked softly. Birds don't need metal to fly. Just memory. Behind her, Chloe and the purser disappeared down the corridor, swallowed by the noise of departing flights. Amara didn't watch them go. She was already thinking of the memo she'd send tonight. A new directive titled Protocol 7, From Audit to Allyship. As they stepped toward the elevator, Maya whispered, What happens now? Amara pressed the button for the top floor. Now, she said. Now the whole world learns that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The doors slid shut, catching her reflection between panels of steel and glass. Power finally looked exactly like her. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, wide glass, cold marble, a skyline still dripping with rain. The city below sparkled like it was trying to atone for the storm. Inside the boardroom, 12 seats waited, already filled with men and women whose faces were half concern, half curiosity. Amara entered without announcement. Silence followed her like protocol. Maya trailed 2 steps behind, unsure whether to breathe or bow. The board chair, a silver-haired man in a navy suit, cleared his throat. "Ms. Cole," he began carefully, "this situation has drawn global attention. The shareholders are asking if this was necessary." Amara set her folder down. "You mean, was accountability necessary?" He blinked, choosing his next words. "You could have handled it quietly, without spectacle." Amara looked around the table. "I've spent years handling things quietly. All it did was teach people how to ignore noise that didn't sound like theirs." A woman from legal shifted her glasses. "But exposing the crew publicly, held a mirror publicly," Amara cut in, calm but unyielding. "If the world has to see the problem to believe it's real, then let them see." Maya watched from the corner, every sentence engraving itself into her bones. The PR director spoke next. "You've sparked a social media storm, ma'am. Where you fire them now is trending globally. The narrative could spin out of our control." Amara's lips curved faintly. Control was never the goal. Consciousness was. The boardroom went quiet. Rain ticked faintly against the panoramic glass, the sound of patience tapping at power. The chair leaned forward. "What do you propose we do next?" Amara stood walking toward the window, the city glowing behind her like a reflection of her resolve. "We rebuild trust, not through slogans but through systems." She turned back to them. "Mandatory empathy certification for all staff, leadership included. Flight audits with passenger observers. Zero tolerance for performative diversity. Real transparency, well, not brochure talk." A young board member hesitated. "That could be expensive," Amara smiled. "Not as expensive as ignorance." Maya nearly smiled too. The chair looked around, gauging the room. "And the crew involved?" "They'll have hearings," Amara said. "Training, not exile. I want them to face what they ignored. Dismissal isn't reform, it's convenience." A murmur of surprise moved through the table. Even Maya's eyes widened. "You're not firing them permanently?" She whispered. Amara glanced her way. "No, the goal was never to ruin lives. It was to restart them." The board chair exhaled slowly. "You've turned a PR disaster into a manifesto." "Into a mirror," Amara corrected. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "The board will back your proposal." "Good," she said, gathering her folder. "Then let's make it policy before sunrise." As the meeting dispersed, one older member lingered, shaking his head with a half smile. "You're making enemies tonight." Amara's response was simple. "Only among those who mistake comfort for leadership." When they stepped back into the corridor, Maya finally exhaled. "I thought you'd want revenge." Amara shook her head. "Revenge wastes power. Justice reinvests it." They walked past a glass wall where the company's mission statement was etched in silver. "To elevate everyone." For the first time, the words felt real. Down below, the terminal lights shimmered against wet pavement. Planes lined up for departure, silver and silent, their engines rumbling like promises kept. Maya looked at her mentor. "What will you call this policy?" Amara paused, considering. "The runway standard," she said finally. "Where respect takes off before the plane does." The phrase hung between them. Steady, luminous. A notification buzzed on Amara's phone. "Rena. Media praising your response. Staff flooding intranet with messages of support." Amara smiled faintly. "Good. Then they're finally seeing what leadership looks like when it lands." The elevator chimed again. Somewhere far below, dawn began teasing the edge of the horizon. The storm had passed, but its message was just beginning to echo. By morning, the rain had gone, leaving the airport wrapped in gold light. The storm's residue gleamed on the runway like proof of something washed clean. From the executive lounge above Gate 12, Amara Cole stood by the window, coffee untouched, watching planes taxi across the wet tarmac. Each takeoff left behind a plume of mist, new beginnings leaving old weight behind. Her phone vibrated against the table. "Rena, overnight reports, 0 cancellations. Public support trending positive. Employee sign-ups for new training program exceed target by 260%. Amara typed a single word back. "Expected," she smiled. Not the smile of satisfaction, but recognition. This was what accountability looked like when it worked. Quiet, firm, self-sustaining. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it signed policies and booked flights. Maya approached from behind, carrying 2 cups. "Black, no sugar," she said, setting one beside Amara. "You remembered." "I learn fast," Maya replied. "Everyone's still talking about last night. The news is calling it the Runway reform." Amara's gaze stayed on the window. "Good, let them talk. Change needs conversation more than applause." Down on the tarmac, a maintenance crew moved in careful rhythm, refueling an aircraft under the rising sun. Every motion seemed deliberate, like choreography rewritten. Maya hesitated before speaking again. "They reinstated the purser and Chloe, pending retraining. HR said you requested it personally." "I did. Why?" "Because if all we ever do is punish, then we become what we hate. People who see mistakes as final instead of formative." Amara turned toward her, eyes soft but steady. "Leadership isn't power over others. It's patience with purpose." Maya absorbed the words like a lesson meant for more than today. "You really believe people change?" Amara sipped her coffee. "If they're forced to face their reflection long enough, yes." A knock on the glass interrupted them. One of the senior executives from last night stood outside, holding a folder marked Runway Standard, Implementation Plan. He entered, expression humbled but earnest. "It's done, ma'am," he said. "Every flight, every crew effective immediately. Orientation videos go live within the hour." Amara nodded. "Good, make sure the message stays simple." "Yes, ma'am." "How simple?" She looked out at the planes again, engines humming like the heartbeat of a system she was rebuilding. "Respect is policy. Everything else is training." The man nodded, almost reverent, and left without another word. For a moment, silence filled the lounge. Then Maya said quietly, "You know, people are calling you the most powerful CEO in aviation." Amara chuckled under her breath. "Power isn't what they think it is. What is it then?" "Power," she said, setting her cup down, "is being able to stay silent until the world finally listens." The morning announcements echoed faintly through the terminal speakers. Flight 1187 now boarding for New York, the same flight number from the night before. A small poetic symmetry. Amara gathered her bag. "You're on that flight," she said to Maya. Maya blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you'll sit in first class this time. And you'll watch how people treat each other when the standard's no longer optional." Maya nodded, emotion rising in her chest. "Thank you, Ms. Cole," Amara smiled. "Don't thank me. Just live it." As Maya left, Amara lingered at the window a moment longer. The plane she'd turned into a symbol now rolled forward again, sleek and silver against the morning light. Passengers boarded unaware of the story that had rewritten the company overnight. But they'd feel its echo in every small act of decency that followed. She whispered, almost to herself, "Justice doesn't need to travel far. It just needs to arrive." Then she turned, her reflection fading into the sunrise. Black suit, steady stride, the quiet proof that dignity never asks permission to board.